from the Teams chat. All right, so hi everyone. There are some seats in the front if you want to go and sit down there. How are we all doing today? Good? Overwhelmed? A little bit? A little stressed? Yes? Okay, so we are hopefully going to help you a little bit today. Both me and Matt are from the Student Learning Support Service, and we're here to help to give you some tips on how to get through university. This is specifically about essential study skills, which is including things like how to write an essay, how to think logically at uni, how to read critically at uni, and how to manage your time at uni. What I wanted to say is that this is a lot of information that we're both going to be throwing at you today. You do not have to remember it all right now. Take photos on your phone if you want to, screenshot if you're watching online, access these recordings after the fact. There will be so much time for you to encounter this knowledge again and again throughout your degree. This is just to introduce you to some of the terms, not to freak you out. But I am sure that you will all leave the session, hopefully, feeling a little less stressed and a little less intimidated than you did walking in. First, I want to acknowledge that Flinders University acknowledges the traditional owners and the custodians of the lands on which its campuses are located. Here at Bedford Park, our campus is on the land of the Kaurna people, and we honour their elders past, present, and emerging. So this is the SLSS. This is where we are from. That's me with the bright yellow hair, as you can see. We are a service that is here to support students, and any of this information that you encountered today, we can help you encounter again at other times throughout your university degree. So keep us in mind if there's anything you need in terms of assessments that you could maybe reach out to us for. But let's get on to essential study skills for uni. So this is what I'm going to be going over today: thinking, reading, writing, and referencing at university, and then finally a little bit of time management. Just a hands up, how many of you are school leavers? Like you just graduated year 12? How many of you has it been a minute since you were in like a school system? Some of you? All right. Hopefully you will all leave today on the same playing field, but I'm sure that some of you have encountered some of these concepts before. But we're going to start with critical thinking. So in university, your tutors and your lecturers, your professors, really what we do here at university is to engage our thinking. And everybody that you will encounter, your classmates and your lecturers, all want to know what you think about a certain topic. That's why we all come here to university, to grow our knowledge. So what is critical thinking? So we need to stay conscious of our thinking. We need to be confronting and interrogating our beliefs. And critical thinking is also about objective analysis and evaluation. It is at the heart of university study, and it helps us to formulate constructive arguments. And then we get onto the age-old question of what is an argument. So in a university, academic arguments are one of the ways that you hone and develop your critical thinking skills. So constructing an argument requires you to think about pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses of a particular idea or theory. And it also involves critiquing ideas and unpacking them. This is what you will be doing for the majority of your university degree. And it's a skill that you will grow as you kind of grow throughout your degree. So this is how we kind of structure an academic argument. It includes a claim, a justification, and evidence. That is how we kind of create our arguments, which form the basis of our essays. There's room at the front if you wanted to come sit down here. This is how you kind of form the basis of your essays, of the scientific reports that you will be writing, of the conversations that you will be having in your tutorial. We come up with our claim and we justify that claim through evidence. And critical thinking is really the capacity to understand and evaluate the work of important researchers. So the capacity to critically analyze literature, which is identifying and analyzing arguments, evaluating logic, evaluating evidence, assessing knowledge claims to see how strong or weak or convincing they are, and the capacity to reason positively in an academic environment, which includes making your own claims, presenting strong arguments, acknowledging engaging debates, and acknowledging the limitations of your research or of research of others. So this brings us to reading at university. How do you read? You skim read, you read quickly, you don't read at all, maybe. This is going to this might be a hurdle for some of you coming into university. We ask you to read a lot in most of the degrees that you will be engaged in. So how do we kind of get over this hurdle and read at university? What we really want to do is read with a purpose. So you will want to ask questions of the chapters that you're reading, the journal articles that you're reading, the evidence that you're reading. What do we want to get out of this reading? You might be given some readings that are designed to be discussed in tutorials along with discussion questions, and you want to use these questions while you are doing that reading. If you have a few different readings for the week, but you know that that tutorial is going to be focused on one particular topic, read with that in mind. And you also want to think about what you already know when you start engaging in academic reading. How can the knowledge that I have already gained, whether that is from your life or whether that is from tutorials that you've attended, lectures that you've attended, how does your knowledge coincide with what you are reading? So think in relation to lecture content or other information. And if you have, or if you achieve any milestones for your reading, reward yourself. A lot of people like to put little candies on pages so that they can eat them once they get to a certain line, whether that's you allow yourself to watch 10 minutes of TikTok if you get through a chapter. Make sure or acknowledge that reading can be, especially engaging in academic reading, can be difficult, and make sure that you reward yourself when you do it because it is necessary. We can also include something like a 5-point reading plan in our strategies for reading at university. So this is a 5-point reading plan, which basically is predict, skim, scan, analyze, and note. So use the knowledge like the title or the abstract and your purpose for the reading to predict whether this book or this reading will be relevant. This is particularly helpful when you're reading for writing assessment. You can then skim, so skimming through for keywords that relate to your topic. You can scan, so if your skim is relevant and you have found those keywords, you can then read the introduction and the conclusion. So for example, read the first sentence of every paragraph. You can analyze, so if you see that these sentences or the intro conclusion are relevant, this is where we spend more time on it by analyzing it closely. And then finally, note, so noting down key ideas and when they are relevant. And ask yourself while reading, what is the aim of the author? What message is the author trying to send? What are the main arguments? Were the arguments supported by evidence? Is the evidence reliable? Did the author influence your opinion? Were you convinced by the arguments? What were the limitations of this study? What do the other researchers say? So how can you use the information from this text for your assessment? So we ask you to engage critically with the things that you will be reading by asking them these kind of interrogative questions. And we have SLSS resources if this is something that you want to learn more about. So we have reading and critical thinking PDF resources, and also through Canvas or Flow. So you can kind of, if you Google SLSS Flinders, you'll be able to kind of find all of these pages. So writing at university. Academic writing will allow you to demonstrate your sound critical thinking skills and your strong academic reading skills. So academic arguments are key here. Most often you'll be presenting an argument in your written work. And there are many forms and genres of academic writing, but the process of tackling a written assessment remains fairly consistent. So really what you will be doing in the process to go through is to analyze, scoping and brainstorming, planning, writing, and finally editing and proofreading. This is the general kind of step plan that you can use for encountering or tackling assessment. So analyzing includes breaking it down to its component parts to see how it works as a whole. So we want to look at our assessment question, and we want to find things like content words, limiting words, or instructional words. So for example, this is a question that you may encounter in your degree: higher education should be free for all, discuss. So we have our content words, which relate to the topic, and our main discussion points. So these are higher education and free. We have our limiting words. These are words that we use to narrow the scope of our answer or our research. So these make parameters more specific. We're talking about higher education here. And then instructional words tell us how to do the assessment. So these core parts will be in every assessment question that you encounter. And this is really what you want to look for to figure out how you will tackle that, how you will respond to it. We then start the researching process. So simple general scoping searches will help here. So what resources or readings have you been given? This is a really good place to start. You can look at your readings list, which will be on Flow, or you can go back and rewatch your lectures, which will also be on Flow. So you want to get a feel for the broader topic and the conversations around it. Planning, which is the most important part of the process. A good planning stage focuses your research, reading, and writing. So you might want to try mind maps, linear planning, free writing, essay plans, bullet point lists, anything that is going to get what is in your head out on the paper to make it a little bit more manageable. Writing is the maybe scariest step. It certainly is for me. So we have our formal but simple language. You will encounter the term academic language a lot while you are here at university. What this really means is formal, simple, concise language, how to get your point across to the broadest kind of scope of readers. So let the material be complex, but not your writing. You don't have to be afraid of using jargon or kind of flowery academic words that you don't necessarily understand. Your goal is to be understood. Use your language to demonstrate your logic and your argument. So we'll be using your reporting verbs, discourse markers. You will ask your tutor whether or not you can use I, which is something you may have encountered in English courses before. So these are all kind of valid questions to be asking of your assessment and of your assessor or your tutor when you get it. And then finally, editing and proofreading. So editing is at the macro level, so content, accuracy, and clarity. And then proofreading is at the micro level, so your mechanics, your spelling, and your grammar. And you can explore strategies for both on the SLSS Flow site or with your tutor in classes. So finally, referencing at university. So referencing at university is built into our values and ethos as a university. We essentially, integrity is a core value, which is essentially maintaining the highest professional and ethical standards at all times, which plays into the way that we want to reference at university. So why do we reference? Why are we asked to create reference lists or bibliographies? Essentially to acknowledge the work of others, to enable someone to access the same resources, to show that you have conducted thorough and balanced research, to meet the requirements of academic integrity, and to situate your work in an academic context. And when do we reference? When you are using an idea which is not originally your own. Also, when you are paraphrasing, so reading a sentence of somebody's work and putting it into your own words is another time when referencing is absolutely necessary. When you're quoting directly, so if you copy and paste a sentence, you think, I couldn't word that better than they have, let me put that in quotation marks and include it. And always remember, we reference ideas. So if there's something that you've encountered through your readings, and that something is an idea that you want to explore generally in a paragraph, that needs to be referenced also. And finally, how are we going on time? Great. We will get to time management. So time management is a big part of your semester. And essentially, we will be managing due dates, managing semester breakdowns, managing your assessment times, and you also want to be maximizing your time. So most courses are based on 13 to 14 week semesters. Mid-semester breaks are usually in April and in September. So if you want to go on holiday, you can plan for that. And the first few weeks of your semester are dedicated, as you have time right now, to settling in and getting into the rhythm of your study. So it's likely when you go into your first couple of weeks of class, there will not be any intensive assessment writing, but you will be reading maybe kind of general introductory readings. You will be doing dreaded icebreakers usually in your tutorials. You'll be introducing yourself to your peers and also your tutors. Now, weeks 6 to 7 are when your first big assessments are usually due. And then weeks 10 to 14 is when your final assignments are due. So how to organize your semester? Something that is really important to acknowledge when you first get into uni is that assignments often cluster around your mid-semester breaks and in the final week of semester. And what I mean by cluster is that oftentimes you will have 3 or 4 assessments due in the same few weeks. This can be really overwhelming when you start planning and you start looking at your SAMs or your statement of assessment methods. So how do we cope with this? This is a reality of university. It is unfortunate, yet it is true. So some of the strategies that I have found personally useful are thinking about a diary or an online phone calendar to map your weekly schedule, or a semester planner. There are some seats down the front. Also, should I try to get some aircon going? Yes. Okay. Do you know where the aircon is? All right. Okay. Matt's on the aircon. I just realized that I'm not the only one sweating. So it's like, all right. So we want to get a diary or an online phone calendar to map your weekly schedule. Now, how many of you have used an organizational tool like an online calendar before? So you have access to Outlook throughout your through uni. So our email service is Outlook, and Outlook has a really good calendar. So if that is something that you are interested in, you can access it on your phone. Yep.
The Flinders University Student Association is also handing out free diaries.
Absolutely, they are. So the FUSA, or the Flinders University Student Association, are also handing out free diaries. And they are also handing out full semester planners. So I don't actually know if this QR code is going to work right now, but they are everywhere. And if you Google Student Planner 2024, you will be able to find it. So this is an example of what we call a statement of assessment methods, which is essentially how your tutor will communicate to you what is due. You will also usually get a topic guide, which you can find on Flow, and you will usually get a kind of full breakdown of when your grades are due, when your assessments are due, and how much they are worth. But this will be one of the first things that you encounter on the Flow site, which is essentially breaking down exactly what you need to do, how much it is worth in terms of your percentages, and then how exactly it will be assessed. So what we essentially want to do is what we can call mapping a plan to completion. So you want to consider the length, the weighting, the research requirements of all of your assessment, and work backwards to find out when you want to start work on that assessment. So you want to include in your calendar planning start date, your research start date, drafting start date, editing start date. All of these things you will need to include in order to get your assessment done in a timely, least stressful as possible, no panic attack issues, right? Because we want to avoid that throughout university. So your uni timetable can be very deceiving. Your weekly contact hours will only take up a few hours a week, but your time will really quickly fill up with university commitments. So this is a good example of what your calendar might look like now with just your contact hours in the calendar. Generally, how many courses or topics are you guys studying? 4? Yeah, maybe some of you are doing 3. I underloaded. Some of you might be overloading. Some of you might be going part-time. But this is what a general week will be looking at in terms of just your contact hours. Now, if we include your tutorial or your necessary components to make sure that when you show up in the room, that you can actually do the work that you need to do, which is essentially discussing your readings, having conversations with your tutors. So you might have 23 pages of reading for one class, 12 pages for another class, 4 chapters for one class, 10 pages for another. These are going to be assigned to you each week, and it is very, very important that you do the readings that you have been assigned. Then we might take into consideration when our assessments start coming due. So if you have a weekly forum post, for example, if you have weekly quizzes you need to get done, if you have essays you need to start researching and writing. And on top of that, how many of you work part-time? Yep. How many of you go to the gym? How many of you have a partner or a friend group that isn't at uni? Some of you, yeah. How many of you have outside of university commitments that you need to do every week? Yes. Some of you might have kids. Some of you might have a husband or a wife that you want to spend time with. All of this stuff needs to be factored into your weekly planner in order to make it relevant or necessary for you to have, right? So how do you deal with the overwhelming amount of things that you have to get done in a week? You need to be strategic about your schedule. So explore how you best work and schedule accordingly. Who works best at night? So in my undergrad, for example, I would write all of my assignments starting at 12 a.m. and I would submit them at 4 and then I'd go to bed, right? How many of you work best in the morning? Yeah. So what you want to do when you are writing a plan is you want to take that into consideration and schedule it into your planner. You also want to study according to cognitive research. So cognitive research has suggested that 1 to 2 hour sessions with short breaks is the most effective way that you can maximize your study time. So it is not worth sitting down for a 6-hour cram session. You likely will not remember any of it after you get up and leave the table. You also want to account for life events, and those include travel, working, things like eating, right? So these are going to actually take up time that you have to account for. And you also want to be as flexible as you possibly can. I have been in university since 2015 in some capacity or another. It never goes the way that you want it to go, and it will always throw multiple curveballs at you consistently. You might forget that an assessment's due. You might forget that you had to do a reading. Assessment might be due sooner than you thought it was. All of these things will accumulate, as well as life stuff happens, and that is unavoidable. My biggest advice, other than maximizing your time as best as possible, is make sure that you're reaching out to the services that you feel as though you need, whether that's counseling and disability, whether that's us at the SLSS, whether that's your tutor or your friend groups. When things don't go according to plan, make sure that you reach out so that we can help you as quickly as possible. Okay, so I know that that was a lot of information, but does anybody have any questions for me? Yes? Okay, so the university's policy on AI assistance in writing. So this is something that the university is currently working on in their policy. Who has used AI in their work before? Some of us? Yep. So as it stands, okay. I am so sorry to have to do this, but if you do want to chat, let me just answer this question first, okay? So if you have used AI before, if you haven't used AI before, rather, it is essentially a generative kind of text creation software. The current university standpoint is that it is becoming unavoidable that students will use it. Ask your individual tutors what their stance on it is, but the current standard is that you can use it if you are explicit in the fact that you are using it. So that means referencing it if you have copy and pasted directly, reference it like you would any other text or reading. Or if you have used something to help with your grammar, like Quillbot, then you want to put that and declare it at the bottom of the page. This is how you can avoid academic integrity issues. Yep.
So can everyone on the line hear me? Just give a little quick thumbs up or something because I'm using a different microphone. Yep, okay. Yeah, just to clarify with that one, it is very important. So the appropriate use of it is very important because misappropriate use is not good for you. These tools are becoming very widespread and very useful, and you can use them, of course. But when you submit work to the university, it's important to recognise that when you do work and submit it, you are indicating that you are submitting work that is written by you, by your hand. And so it doesn't matter where you are at the university, you need to make sure that you don't have material in there that is either copied from another source, for example, literature, without proper citation, or using a generative artificial intelligence without appropriate reference and things like that. You can't just, use it for everything and then say, and then declare that you used it, because in communicating ideas and a discussion in an assessment piece, the assessor, because we're here to learn, right? The assessor wants to know what is going on for you in your head, right? They're trying to give you feedback on your learning progress. So if you start a degree in engineering, you're not an engineer yet, right? But sometime you will be. So as you go through each of your topics, and you study different aspects of engineering, the lecturers here want to be able to assess how you're thinking and how you're progressing toward becoming an engineer, and you won't be there straight away, right? So in first year, we give you a few things to do, assess how you go, give you some feedback. Second year, you progress a little further. Eventually, you become an engineer or whatever field that you're working in. So it's important when you do assessments to provide to the lecturer things that you have done, written by your hand, so they can give you good feedback. That's the most important thing about that. So it's good to use as a tool. And if you have any further questions, it's good to verify with your lecturers what their position is on using that at this time, because it does change, of course, very rapidly. Does anyone have any further questions about that one? There were a few questions online that just asked about artificial intelligence, what it is. It's a language model. It gathers together a lot of information and it gives you an answer to a question that you ask. It's a very good chat bot, basically. Yes, in the room.
Mm-hmm. So the question has just been, can I use ChatGPT or another AI service to help with grammar? Do you want to go?
Yeah, you can. Again, it's important that so if you have some text, right, and you put it through, this is a very difficult question. I don't have a solution, and Catherine doesn't have a solution. That's why she threw it to me.
I wish I did.
It's important that you can use these tools to improve grammar and things like that, of course. But it's a very challenging line between using it to improve some grammar and then it kind of takes over a bit, right? So I think this is something that you can practice in time and ask many different people. If we had a chat, I would chat to you in more detail about that and have a look at how you're using it to improve your grammar and things like that and provide you with some advice there. Broadly, it's okay to use things like Grammarly and other things like this to improve your grammar and to learn from that as well. And if you want to use it because it's a very nuanced thing very well, you can also come and chat to us at the Student Learning Support Service. Did we talk about the Learning Lounge and things like that?
Briefly.
Maybe yeah.
Yes.
We have drop-in support at the library. You can come and have a chat. But basically, my advice to you now is to ask many people, right? And to follow that up. if you like to use it for that, because it is a useful tool to improve grammar and sentence structure and things like this as well, of course. Yeah, it's just a bit nuanced.
Yes, and the academic integrity policy is currently being updated to reflect it. So that is something that your tutors and your lecturers will be able to share with you once that's all kind of finalized. Okay, are there any other questions in the room? Yes. Okay, so this is another complicated question. What form of referencing will be used in uni? I hate to be the one to tell you this. Most colleges use different referencing systems. You are not expected to know them off by heart. The SLSS has guides for the two most common, which are APA 7 and also Harvard, right? Yeah, Harvard. Now, if you're studying English, MLA is often used. If you're studying film or art history, it's Chicago. What do you use in engineering?
I just want to point out that the question was online as well. So many people are asking this.
Yeah.
The important thing about the referencing is that it is a convention, right? So you should always reference, but what convention you use is different. And the reason why you use a convention is so that you can write references in shorthand. Instead of writing half a page with all the information about a resource, writing title, this is the title, author, this is the author, all the authors, this is whatever. We write it in a shorthand using different formats like italicizing some aspects, putting a full stop somewhere, putting numbers in brackets, all this kind of stuff to make it easy to read. So different fields have different conventions, and that's normally by tradition, or it's happened over a long period of time. If you, for example, APA 7 is one that's used broadly, and it's used in psychology, for example, and education and things like this. Sometimes they change, but you get no sympathy from me because my field was not actually engineering. My field before I became an education specialist was in science and chemistry, and every journal had their own referencing convention. And so I was a researcher for a long time in that field, and I would write an article I wanted to publish somewhere in a journal, and then if I couldn't publish it somewhere and I had to go somewhere else, I had to change all of my referencing.
That's really brutal, Matt.
It's very brutal. And I once wrote an article that had over 200 references, and I had to go through changing all of them. So hopefully that never happens to you, but at least you don't have, unless you're going to go into chemistry, a different referencing system for every journal.
Are there any other questions in the room? One over here, yep. Are you allowed to use referencing generators? Yeah, absolutely, you can. Just check that it is correct before you submit. So my advice is if you want to, you have a huge number of references, if you want to chuck them all into a referencing generator, once that has kind of spat out the content, check it against the referencing guide either from the SLSS or from another university, which will usually tell you whether or not the full stops are in the right place. Any other questions? Yep. I believe that the university does provide access to Word.
My understanding is yes. There are programs that you can access as a Flinders student. You get quite a bit of access to different things. One of them, I'm not sure if I was distracted before, is Studiosity is another support resource. I'm doing another session at 11:30, and I'll talk about that a bit as well. Microsoft Word, I think the whole Microsoft suite, and your Flinders email address is connected with Outlook.
Yes, it is all connected with Outlook, and I believe that you do get access to the Microsoft suite with your university kind of fan and your logon. Yep. Mm-hmm. So if you want to come in and chat about your academic essay? Yes, you can come and ask us. If you have any questions about academic writing, you can come to the Seek Us Out. So we have a learning lounge, which are drop-in sessions on all 3 of our campuses. On the Bedford Park campus, it's level 2 of the library, and it's open, I believe, from 11 until 2 every day, excluding public holidays. So we can help you with looking through your referencing, helping a little bit with content. We can help you interpret essay questions, help you interpret feedback. You can also just sit there, in silence while you write your paper. I've sat with students while they've done that before, but we are there to help if you need anything.
Got a couple of questions online.
Yeah.
So I'll just have a look back through them. Where do we find what system, this is about referencing, is in our college? You've got plenty of time. You'll find that out pretty soon. Normally, when you start your topics, you'll go through assessments and it will say something about the referencing convention that they're expecting for referencing. If not, you can ask. Sometimes the thing is that, you know, just because you are studying a particular thing, like if you're an education student, doesn't mean you're just going to be studying in the College of Education, Psychology and Social Work. You might also study topics in different colleges, okay? So for every topic you have to think, is my referencing system changing? And it's not a huge thing to worry about, okay? They're all similar. They all function in a similar way. They just are a little bit different. We've got, just for you, Catherine, a lot of people have been asking for a copy of the slides, like a PDF, to be dropped in the chat so that people can have a look at. So we'll try and get to that a little bit later.
Absolutely. I will pop the PDF in the chat if you want it.
Yep. Another question, how do you drop in, we're talking about the Learning Lounge, I think, when we study online. There is another service called Studiosity. Now, when you're in Flow, Flow is a learning management, it's called Flinders Learning Online, is a learning management system. It's different to the platforms that you usually interact with, okay? It's a little more clunky than that, but it's got everything in it, okay? That you need for your different topics. And you may or may not have had a play around with that yet, but you'll get very familiar with it soon. Whenever you're in a topic of study, on the left side, there's a menu on the left side. You should be able to see Studiosity written somewhere there. If you click on that link, it'll take you through probably a sign-in page, all this kind of stuff. Studiosity is not Flinders, it's a third party, and you can be in touch with support there. They provide support 24/7. You can chat with someone. You can also submit draft assignments for them to read and provide you with some feedback as well. So if you're not on campus but you need some support, you can access Studiosity. And I have a question for Catherine here regarding reading or discussions that you talked about in the planner. Are there any online services available?
For helping with readings? For helping with readings, I would suggest coming in to the Learning Lounge with your reading. I think that it might be an interesting tool to use an AI or a ChatGPT to help clarify anything that you're confused about in the reading. That's something that I've done before, kind of chucking a sentence into ChatGPT and asking it to reword it in less complex language. That can be helpful in terms of organizing the key ideas. But the number one thing I would suggest is chatting to your tutor or your peers about the reading. So we ask as tutors that you engage or make a really good attempt at the weekly content that we ask you to get through. But there is also nothing wrong with getting into the room and your comment being, I really tried, but I could not. And I just absolutely was confused by everything. Really, the main goal is to just actively engage. Okay, do we have any other questions in the room? Just one? Yeah? That's okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's some time that I make some mistake about presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything supporting for us?
Come into the SLSS, definitely. Come into the Learning Lounge. We can help you with broadly your entire assessment writing schedule. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else? One more?
Just a very quick question online asking about, this is for everyone's benefit, if other programs or applications like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, etc. are available. Broadly, no. However, if you are going to be studying in that space, I don't know about, if you are studying design and you're in your second and third year, whether in those particular disciplines you get access to certain things. I know that when I was a chemistry student, I did get access through Flinders to a particular drawing program specifically for chemists, and I wouldn't have known that at the start, but also I didn't really need to know about it. So at least initially, no, you won't have access to those additional apps. It's broadly just the Microsoft Suite and perhaps a few others. If you Google this, Flinders and student access to software, all that kind of stuff, you can also find the information online.
If you're in a college that will broadly require the use of Final Cut or Premiere Pro or Photoshop, these things are preloaded into a lot of the computers in the humanities courtyard. So they are called our editing labs, and we have those systems already preloaded onto them. You don't have to be in Screen or the Bachelor of Creative Industries to use those computers, but you might have difficulty getting in there when a class isn't in there. When you get into the upper year levels, you can request home access for those programs.